This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business, or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Jeffrey Reddick.
This is Dexter from
This
The
is
Osprey.
Nathan East.
This is Sebastian Younger.
This is David Lab.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
I'm Krista Vernoff.
This is Ryan Sickles.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, I'm Mark Valley.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Mark Schaefer, and you're listening to The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero, Mark Valley, and Pete A. Turner.
Mark Schaefer is a consultant on marketing, and he is the author of several books: The Content Code, Born to Blog, The Tao of Twitter, which is the best-selling book on Twitter since 2010. And his most recent book is called Known, the Handbook for Building and Unleashing Your Personal Brand. And we're elated to have you on the show because we have a lot of unleashing of our personal brand that we want to talk with you about. And hopefully our listeners will learn a lot of great lessons. So you recently updated the Tao of Twitter. What needed updating since 2010?
Well, as they say in Texas, pert near everything. Well, social media has changed a lot, and specifically Twitter has changed a lot. And the last edition of the book came out in 2014. And here we are in 2018. And the first question I had to answer was, what is Twitter today? Is Twitter still relevant? Or is it just become a broadcast channel and a place to spam people with links or worse? So I forced myself to do a deep dive. And I have to say it was a little bit embarrassing that I almost had to rediscover Twitter. And what I found was really quite interesting. The premise of my book all along has been that Twitter is the most human-powered network. If you think about all the most amazing, fun things on Twitter, they weren't invented by Twitter. They're invented by people. Hashtags were invented by a person, and Twitter chats and all the games that people play on Twitter. And what I found, really getting back into it, is that there's kind of three Twitter worlds. There's the world of Wall Street that doesn't like Twitter and expects it to be Facebook. There's the world of corporate marketers, which doesn't really like Facebook because they want it as a place to place ads, and they don't understand that doesn't really work too well on Twitter. And then there's 330 million active users, and to them, Twitter is part of the fabric of their lives. And when I really got back into it, I got to tell you, fellas, it was so much fun, and it was so inspirational to see how people are really communing on Twitter and having fun, inspiring each other and playing games and learning and connecting. And so I was kind of re-energized. And I think with all the things going on with Facebook today and the difficulties in advertising and getting our messages across, I actually predict that Twitter will become more relevant in marketing. I think that we'll see a renaissance over the next few years.
Wow. What about compared to the other social media platforms specifically? Because I thought the hot hand right now was Instagram.
Well, it is, but I think Instagram is hot. It's very vital, but you have to kind of look at where are the audiences? What can we do to stand out? And the problem that's facing Facebook and to some extent Instagram is they're running out of space to put ads. So there's a certain art to displaying ads. You can't show too many or people are going to get turned off. So you've only got like a theoretical advertising inventory. And what's happening on Facebook and on Instagram is filling up. I believe it was about, I want to say maybe 6 months ago in an earnings call, an executive from Facebook basically said, we're running out of space. Now, the next big hope for Facebook is Messenger. They've got to find a way. How do we monetize this? How do we show people ads in this private messaging space without creeping them out? And they'll probably figure out a way to do that. But in the meantime, the ad inventory is going down, prices are going up, and so advertising on TV isn't working like it used to. Advertising in newspapers and radio isn't working like it used to. 30% of Americans are using ad blockers on their smart devices now. It's getting more expensive and actually kind of controversial in some ways to advertise on YouTube with some of the problems they've had there. So where's all this advertising money going to go? It's got to start squeezing out into other places. And where's that going to be? I don't know. But I do think it's time for marketers to take a fresh look at Twitter. And it's not going to work for everybody because you've got to be a little quirky. You've got to be a little conversational to make it work on Twitter. And that doesn't work for every company.
Well, that's our audience, though. So before we talk about what works for companies, I think it's more important for our listeners to talk about what works for individuals in building a tribe, as opposed to a company that's going to build a big loyal audience to use Tide soap or whatever. So if we're talking about, maybe a guy's a handyman or maybe a guy is an artist, and we're talking about gathering a tribe that's going to support you. First of all, are the social media platforms, you think, separated to some degree by trade, for lack of a better thing to call it?
Well, I guess so. But so let's talk about this very specifically and talk about some of the magic of Twitter.
Okay.
Number one, why Twitter for small businesses and entrepreneurs? There is no better way, no social platform organically that is better to build an audience and connect people to your content and your site than Twitter. End of story. I mean, LinkedIn. Okay. There's not many conversations going on LinkedIn, right? Facebook people are very protective. It's kind of family and friends. They may not want to let the handyman in. Eventually, maybe, but not at first. Twitter, however, even if people don't connect to you, you can still connect to them. They don't have to follow you back to build a tribe like that on Twitter. That's number one. Number two, there is no better platform that can find those people. There's so many third-party tools out there to find people who are interested in DIY or boating or outdoors or gardening or things in your community where you can find people in a certain geographic area. You can find them, connect to them, and start to connect. Third magical thing. What I find over and over again is the tribe you build on Twitter, they're loyal. I ran into a friend of mine from Twitter the other day, and I said I had been meeting with a financial planner. And she said, oh, is he on Twitter? We kind of need a financial planner to be on Twitter in this community. So the people on Twitter tend to kind of support the people on Twitter. Here's number 4 and final magic about Twitter and small businesses. You can save a search and say, I want to have a search in a certain geographic area, and I want to see every tweet about problem with my house, broken door, needs repair, looking for repairman. You can save all those keywords and look at it every day and see who needs help. And then you just send them a little tweet, or you say, hey, saw you're having some problems. We follow each other on Twitter, or I don't know you yet, but I'm available today. I could come out and give a free estimate, something like that. So Twitter is a very, very powerful source of leads and community. Arguably for a small business person, it's the best social media platform out there.
Okay, let's help everybody understand this strategy, because you described it for a handyman, and maybe you're having some problems with your light switches, and somebody who specializes in that can find you in a geographical area. Let's equate it to yoga. So you can look for people who are in your area who are looking for a place to do hot, sweaty yoga.
Maybe they just look hot and sweaty in their profile picture. Who knows?
Okay.
Whatever
but I mean,
works.
You can find your like-minded folks who are looking for a resource that you might provide just through searching keywords in a geographic area.
So here's an example. There's an amazing thing on Twitter called Twitter lists. So people build these lists by category. So for example, I wanted to build a list of CMOs, marketing executives. So I can search for people who have built lists with hundreds of names of CMOs all around the world. And I can go on there and I can follow these people. And about 70% of the time, they'll follow me back. But that doesn't even matter so much because I can still follow them. Now, it's the same thing with small business. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I can almost guarantee you someone has built a list of the fitness community in Knoxville, Tennessee. You go on there, who's on the list, and you follow all those people because you know that they love fitness. You can probably do a search for Knoxville and yoga to see who are the yoga enthusiasts out there. And then once you connect to those people, those will lead you to new people. And you can't be out there selling. The real key to connecting on social media is to make friends. People buy from who they know, like, and trust. So go out there.
Can I ask you for a general rule of thumb? Because we want to offer content. Pete and I talk about this all the time. We have a lot of content to offer. And every once in a while we feel like, hey, we've given you a bunch of content. We'd like you to do this for us.
Yeah,
maybe
fair.
Go give us a review on iTunes or those kind of things to build the podcast audience. But what do you think is a general rule of thumb is the offer versus ask ratio? What's healthy?
Well, I mean, first let's take a step back. And one of the things we haven't talked about my new book called Known, which is about building your personal brand. And really it's relevant to any small business or entrepreneur. But one of the big things I talk about this in the book, I've got a whole chapter devoted to it, is building an actionable audience. And that's different from a Twitter audience or a social media audience. I've got 100, I don't know how many people follow me on Twitter, maybe 150 or 160,000. I haven't looked at it in a while. But if I put something out there right now and I said, hey, everybody, buy my book, how many books would I sell? My guess is somewhere between 1 and 0. Now, but the people who follow my blog, that's an actionable audience because they've built an emotional connection to me over time through my content. When someone follows you on Twitter, when someone likes you on Facebook, that's like waving at you. They're waving at you, they're saying hello, it's like shaking your hand, but they're not ready to buy something from you yet. So you have to do the work to turn those weak relational links of social media into an actionable audience. And I don't want to dismiss social media because these are important opportunities to find these people that we never could have found before. And waving at you, that's a good first step. But it's not really enough to get people to buy anything from you.
When I work on Twitter.
Terrific. So
when I'm working on Twitter, one of the things I've noticed too, and I've worked hard to try it. I read the book, by the way. Let me just say this and slow down and say, you guys should follow Mark on Twitter. It's Mark W. Schaefer. He has 170,000 followers. His book, Known.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
it's gone up.
It's gone up. There's this handsome devil with his hand in the air talking authoritatively from the stage. And I wanted to let you know, part of what you talk about in creating content to get known is to be on things. So a friend of the show is Anthony Iannarino, and you were on his show, and that's where I found you. So that Yeah, that's it. And then one of the things also that I've learned from you is that as you create content, you create opportunities for people to discover you. It's not, I've written this one great, brilliant piece of my intelligence, everybody look and come. No one's going to do that. That's not how you build an active audience. You have to continually inspire them, even if it's smaller things. You know, you talk about how you write on Twitter in your Tao of Twitter book. It's great. So.
Right. Oh, but you know what I love about your story is it's a great case study, because why did Anthony have me on my program? Because I was known. He had read my blog post. Other people had kind of talked about me to him. They suggest, oh, you ought to have Mark on your show. I was on his show. Now, and why was I on his show? Because I was known. Then you heard the show. Then you started to follow me. And now, so at this point, we were weak relational links, right? I mean, we didn't really know each other. Now we're talking to each other on a podcast. We're collaborating. We're creating content together. And now you never know where that will go in our lives.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say, I've been on Anthony's show also. For a different reason, because I've done a lot of time in combat zones and learned a lot about culture and everything. And when he was talking to you, he talked about some of his warrior peers, and he may not have been talking directly about me, but he definitely referenced who I am and saying, you know, some of these guys have been on the side of a mountain and no one knows about them. So I was like, whoa, ears perked up. Like, let me listen to what Mark has to say. So it's an incredible thing. And the juxtaposition of I've gone and done these hard things that are incredibly impactful, but no one cares because no one knows. And getting over that hump is what you have given us a program to do. And that's, that's what I love about what you're doing. And it's practical. This isn't like be better, be more trustworthy.
I hate that stuff. I call those the rainbow bombs.
Yeah.
You know, you go onto Twitter and it makes you feel like crap, because you feel unless you're in some stage of becoming remarkable, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, it sure is. One of the things we've been playing with recently on the show, because we do have a lot of celebrity actor type people on, is a program of show up on time, hit your mark, tell the truth. That's rainbow stuff. But in the middle of that, like, well, what is the truth? Is it your truth? Is it the truth required in that situation? Is it the truth of the person that you're trying to work for? And you start to break down these subsets and you realize those 3 simple things are comprised of 1,000 smaller sub-skills that you have to master to be able to do those things.
One of the things I talk about in the book is this idea of strategic authenticity. You know, I don't think, I mean, the reason I dislike this overused word of authenticity is because authenticity means that you are the same wherever you are. And I think that's different than honesty and congruency. So authenticity means, you know, if I've got a snotty nose, I'm going to be talking about it. If I'm gassy today, I'm going to be talking about it. So everybody shines themselves up a little bit. And so you've got to decide, okay, well, what's the right balance for me? And I do think today to build that turns them into an actionable audience, it requires showing a little bit of what you stand for, what you've been through in your life, you know, what's important to you now. I mean, I don't go onto social media and whine about everything that's going on in my world. I don't think people want that. I try to be positive. I try to lift people up. I try to be honest. I don't have an agenda. I'm not an evangelist for anything. I'm not selling, you know, courses and all this stuff. I try to tell the truth. Hopefully that's what I'm known for. And I reveal enough of how I work and what I do in my life so that people can build that emotional connection to me.
That is terrific. Strategic authenticity. This is a neat concept that I really like and I'd like to explore, because when you talk about strategic authenticity, I think one of the perceptions that I'd like to address about this is that you're maybe hiding certain things, and we all do a little bit of that. But I think if I can be so bold as to describe strategic authenticity, isn't that you're hiding from anything. It's that you are you're prioritizing the things that you're authentic about. And I have a great example. I working for a construction company and doing some marketing where we're figuring out the Mount Diablo. And it's a beautiful view of Mount Diablo, except there's a pile of these wall panels just right in the way. And the picture that the guy that one of the guys took, he circled the panels and wrote the word lame on it. He said, "I have this beautiful view, and when are we going to move these panels?" And I thought, no, we ought to post that. That's perfect, because it's a challenge that everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
It's like we're doing this great work. We have this tremendous view in this location where we're working, and it sucks that we have this big pile of panels. We haven't had time to move them. Everybody has something in their life that sucks that everybody's going to laugh at, or that some people are going to find humorous and relate to. And I think that's the strategic authenticity. It's not that we're hiding from it. Oh, don't post that picture. It's put it out there.
I wrote a kind of a tongue-in-cheek blog post a couple weeks ago. The COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, had made a comment that, nobody needs a personal brand. That just sounds exhausting. And, so I, for fun, I Googled Sheryl Sandberg and I clicked on the image button, and I saw that every single image on the web of Sheryl Sandberg, she was wearing a either white or black designer suit. So my headline was, why personal branding is important, or why Sheryl Sandberg never wears a t-shirt. Now, of course she wears a t-shirt. Of course her hair gets messy. She's got 2 little kids. But for her to give herself the best opportunity to succeed in this world, she curates a certain image. It doesn't mean she's not honest. It doesn't mean that she's not congruent. But she's going to sell more books if she's in a suit instead of sweatpants. She's going to be doing a better job on Wall Street for Facebook if she is in a suit instead of sweatpants. So that whether she knows it or not, she's curating her personal brand. She is being strategically authentic. And I think that's a good business decision.
Yeah, it is a good business decision.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Well, I was just going to say, I'd be amused by seeing a picture of her in sweatpants, and I don't know that that's necessarily a terrible thing. I mean, we've had our friend Gabby Reese on the show, and she's a fitness guru, and she's the fittest coming up on 50-year-old I think I know. But she posted a picture not long ago of her getting out of the pool that was, let's just say it was not the most flattering photo. I mean, there was some cellulite in the photo, and she's not hiding from it.
Yeah.
She said, look, hey, everybody, you got cellulite. I do too. And
I think, but that's important for her and her audience. It helps her be more successful because, she is connecting in an emotional way. And you can say, oh, wow, I can really relate to her. I mean, that's something that I did in the first chapter of Known. I did something very, very difficult. I revealed kind of some dark things that I went through in my life. And it was a very hard decision to do that. It was kind of like my life cellulite. And the reason I did that was to set kind of a tone in the book to say, I'm not speaking to you from a mountain. Wherever you are in your life, I was below that. So I did it. This is where I started my journey. I was wherever, if 0 is at the lowest, possibly I was below that. Let's go. Let's do this together. And I use other examples in the book as well of other people who were, faced all kinds of problems. And some of them were on the brink of homelessness, but they were all able to follow this path and become successful.
Terrific. Did it end up being cathartic?
Not really.
I was hoping.
I knew what I was doing, but here was the surprise. I was so close to this book, and I knew I had written a good book, and I was very, very proud of it. But what I didn't realize is the emotional impact this was going to have on people. One lady wrote me, she said, I was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike and I had to turn off because I was crying. The first review of the Audible version of the book, the guy writes in the headline, "This is the most inspiring book I've ever heard." Now, I didn't expect that, but I'll tell you something. I wouldn't have received that response if I didn't take the risk of showing a little bit of myself.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to create that emotional thing. I'm really big, Mark, on the affect over effect because perspective matters. And Cheryl, I don't fault Cheryl for being wonderfully successful. I don't fault her for talking to her audience because she knows her audience. But she does have I'm on top of the mountain. You shouldn't, try to come up here through this avenue approach thing. When you tell me like I should try harder or I should do, and you're already up there, I can't connect with where she's at with an audience. She creates a negative affect with me. Not that I don't like her, but I have to get over that barrier for her to consume what she has. And then once I get there and consume her product, it's always excellent. But that affect, that thing, you have to expose to create that emotion that you want. And in your book, you've got this inspirational thing that's allowed because instead of focusing on, I'm going to tell you every single thing that you have to do in a program that's cold and has no emotion, you open yourself up and expose yourself, let your ego down. And it turns out our ego is our greatest protector and our worst friend because it won't allow us to fail. How do you, but what's too much? If you don't have an audience, or your audience is emerging, fledgling, whichever nice word you want to use, what's too much?
Well, I think that might, it takes just some practice and some trial and error. I'll give you an example. I mean, there's someone that I follow on Facebook, and she talks very openly about her addictions, and she talks about her depression, and she talks about how difficult it is for her to work sometimes. Now, if your goal is to be an addiction counselor and to inspire people with your story and lift people up, that's okay. If your goal is to be a successful accountant, that's not okay. Because all things being equal, I'm probably going to choose the accountant who is not a depressed drug addict. So I think you just have to find what's right for you based on your goals. You've got to reveal what's right to build trust in you and what you stand for.
You know why I asked this question? Because you can, you remember in the 90s when it was like brutal honesty is the main way to go? Not necessarily. Brutal honesty can be detrimental, especially if you're trying to build trust. Trust is about reducing ego, but it isn't about taking your pants down. If you want to build trust, it's okay to show the side that is the good side of you. If you want to build trust by showing all of your flaws, well, good luck.
Yeah, that's going to be the headline for my next blog post. It's going to be what I learned from the Break It Down show.
Nice.
It's not about taking your pants down.
That's the last thing I think anybody would have learned from this show.
That is going to be my next headline.
Well, the entire time we're wondering where the line is. I'm wondering when I can interject. I'm just hoping Pete would put on a shirt. And I held that line back, and then you divulged that you learned something from this show, and it involves not taking your pants down. So
we're just going to new places here today.
All kinds of new places.
Yeah, and again, Pete will do anything to build his brand. So again, for our listeners, I would like to make sure that we're doing a good job at capturing these practical steps in fulfilling whatever your small business goals are, building your audience, building your tribe. And in doing so, when we talk about these vulnerabilities that we want to expose, there's a charm in that vulnerability. And as long as I think the takeaway is, as long as we're balancing it with the professionalism that honors your audience, then it's fine. You should allow your personality to shine through while still delivering the level of professionalism that your tribe expects of you. And since your tribe should be like-minded individuals, everybody ought to have a pretty firm sense of where that is. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. And here's what kind of guides me. It's always in the back of my head when I have to make decisions about how I show up on the web, how I show up in the world. I mean, first and foremost, I like what you said about being professional. I think being a leader and being a role model, that's important to me. I want to show people that you can be a nice person and help people and lift people up and be successful on the web. But I also have this thing in the back of my mind that for most people, when they view their Facebook news feeds, can you guess what the number one emotion is?
I hate Donald Trump anger.
Close. It's jealousy.
Okay.
Because, once you look at your news feed and you see a steady stream of the perfect husband with the perfect children going on the perfect vacation, you just start to think, I can't compete with that. Now, they're showing their shiny best selves. Everybody does to some extent. And so I get to go to cool places and meet cool people and have interesting discussions like I'm having with you guys today. But in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, I need to balance that. It's important for me to show that I am just a normal guy like everybody else. I want to be accessible. I want to be conversational. I want to be nice. I want to show that I'm human. And look, I get to go to cool places, but, I've worked 35 years to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot.
35-year overnight success, Mark.
Yeah, that's right.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit.
Hey, just to do the quick touch, let's just do the quick touch, Pete.
Yeah.
Everybody go follow Mark Schaefer. He's at Mark W. Schaefer, and you can't miss his handsome mug on Twitter. And that's where he's going to guide you, of course, because he's the author of The Tao of Twitter. Also, buy his latest book, which is called Known. Pick it up wherever I like Amazon, but you can also get it on Audible. So it's Known, the handbook for building and unleashing your personal brand. Pete, where were you?
Well, actually, I'll even take that endorsement further. We don't have people on the show if one of us hasn't bought or read the book. And I've absolutely been through Known a couple of times. And this is how Mark impacts me as I try to do the show stuff that we do. If I have time to do the dishes or whatever, I don't necessarily go to one specific podcast, but I do consistently look for what Mark is saying next, because you always give me things to think about. And sometimes I'm so dumb, sometimes it takes me going back to Anthony's show from 2016, the early part of 2016, and going, oh crap, I'm not doing these things. So I constantly get insight and things to tighten up and improve my game on, and it has absolutely helped us out. So if you guys are sitting over there listening and you're at a cube, or you're doing the dishes or whatever it is, I definitely, Pete says for sure, you can consume what Mark gives you in terms of blogs, podcasts, whatever, and you will be rewarded, because it is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's so nice
it.
of you to say. That means the world to me. I'm a teacher in my heart. So when I learn that there's somebody out there who's appreciating the things that I say, that gives me my fuel to keep on going. So thank you for those kind words.
I wouldn't have you here if I didn't truly believe that. Let's talk a little bit to that person in that cube who's trying to figure out what's next. And they're on year 20 of their grind to 35, and they're like, I've got to either figure it out internally or I've got to get outside of this place that I'm working at. That's terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about you've been in this where you're like, I achieved all this success at the company that you talk about on Anthony's thing. I won't call them out because that's on you, but you'd won these 2 times, the only 2-time winner of like the Guy
Chairman's
of the Year award there. Yes. And so what? If you're not happy, if you're not achieving it, if you've got a different story to tell, what about internal brands? Can companies, this whole entrepreneurial concept, is this a real thing, or is this a trend like brutal honesty in the mid-90s?
Yes. Long term, entrepreneurs won't work. And here's an amazing lesson I learned, when I was in graduate school. I had this wonderful opportunity to meet the founder of Verifone. Whenever you use a credit card sale and you go swipe, that's Verifone. And this guy was a true global visionary. And he said, when somebody in his company has a big new idea for a big business, what he did is he set off an entirely different warehouse for these people to work in. He became like a VC for these people, but they weren't involved in the company anymore. And he said, here's why. If you have an idea from an entrepreneur and you have an idea from an intrapreneur, the entrepreneur will win every time because they're hungry. They're desperate. They got to do it. They don't have a 9-to-5 job. They don't have benefits. They don't have a steady paycheck. And as long as you're checking out on this 9-to-5 job, you're not going to be a successful entrepreneur. So, to win the race, the entrepreneurial track is always going to win. So I think we see that in companies today. I see a lot more movement toward big companies buying ideas, buying people, buying companies that have made it rather than investing internally. Of course, there will always be some of that. But I think the beauty of the thing today, the opportunity that we have, is for that person sitting in the cubicle saying, I've got this big idea, what's next? Here's the difference between that person today and my experience sitting in a cube 30 years ago. How would I become known for 30 years ago? I'd have to be in the newspaper. There was no internet to speak of. I'd have to be on TV. And you know what? That's someone else's decisions. You've got to go through these gatekeepers. You've got to jump over these hurdles. You got to kiss someone else's butt. Today, you can create your own power, your own influence. We can publish. We can have a voice through a video, through a podcast like you're doing today. You two are a great example. You're creating your own power and influence today by publishing amazing, helpful content on a consistent basis, and that's how we break free and do something, and become known for something in this world. And every person has the power to do it. Can everybody do it? No, because people are going to be discouraged. They're going to quit too soon. They're going to get tired. They're not going to be, consistent. They're not going to have that grit to keep going. But everybody has that opportunity. And my hope is that everybody at least goes for it, at least gives it a try. We've got this historically important opportunity, and I just hope people go for it.
That is the theme of this show. From its very inception has been, we just have to try to encourage people to go do their thing. We're not going to try to influence what their thing is. We're just going to try to get everybody to take the chance, get off the couch, go do the thing, whatever is inspiring. And that's ultimately what we find inspiring about your message, is that it allows other people to find their own successes, and it creates an environment that we all want to live in, where people are doing interesting stuff because they're no longer, I think they're, surrounded by people who don't accept complacency. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the difference between the intrapreneurship and the entrepreneurship that you talk about. Of course, there's the level of, I have to do it because nobody's going to do it for me. Nobody's going to I can't rest on laurels. I don't have that luxury. And the entrepreneurial mindset puts a person in that place where if the job doesn't get done, I will never get paid. And if I don't do it, nobody will do it for me. But I think ultimately that's the difference, is the level of complacency being unacceptable. And that's what we want everybody to strive for. Mm-hmm. What message do you have for the folks who are well on their way and they're doing everything that they can to publish and create content that, hopefully inspires and informs people, and they're not seeing the return that they wanted to see in the amount of time that they wanted to see it? I mean, aside from the message of, hey, hang in there, it'll, it's a tall mountain, but keep hanging in there. What can we say to those folks?
Well, that actually would not be my message, but it depends on how long they've been doing it. If they've been out there creating content consistently, let's say for a year and a half or more, and they're not really seeing any returns, I think you need to really step back and say, what's going on here? A couple quick examples. I was kind of doing a coaching session with a fellow who had read my book, and he had been creating content for a long time, but what we found is that his audience was just too small. There weren't enough people out there that really cared about what he did to create any sort of business benefits. Another example is I was working with a person, and they were just creating content in the wrong place. And if they just kind of moved a different way, they would find more success. So two big ideas, I think. Number one, if you've been doing it for a while, what I would strongly recommend is to, even if you've been doing it for a while, read this book that I've written called Known, because it lays out the 4 steps that every person has taken to be known, and there isn't any exceptions. This is how it works today. And I think even if you've been out there for a while, you might see something in there that makes you go, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. The second thing I would recommend is keep track of not just the quantitative measurable things that you can point to, like money or leads, but look at qualitative measures that it's working. So, for example, what do I mean by that? Is someone asking you a question because they've heard of you? Are they inviting you to be on a podcast? Are they inviting you to contribute a blog post? Are they asking you to come speak to a local club? Those are all measures. Those are all like milestones that it's working. Keep track of those things. As long as those things keep coming, it's working. Don't give up, because you're becoming known, and the financial benefits will eventually follow. That's the biggest problem, is that people do give up too soon. So as long as you're seeing progress, keep on going. It's working.
Okay. It's tough it's tough to be so encouraging, and you have to be pragmatic. You have to take a look at what's working. But I'm glad to see that there are qualitative measures as well as quantitative measures, because sometimes you don't see your audience growing fast enough. Sometimes you don't see the revenue coming in, and you don't realize that you've become an authority on a subject. And like you said, those things will come because folks will trust what you have to say and trust what you have to deliver. And if you're doing that, then you're doing right. And if you're not doing that,
absolutely.
I hope that I'm encapsulating what you are saying properly, because I'm trying to do this for our audience, but it's just as much as exercise for me. I want to make sure I'm understanding these messages correctly, because, we're doing the same thing that we're asking everybody else to do, which is circle the wagons, grab your folks, build your tribe, talk to your like-minded individuals.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can all do this to some degree together.
I have
one other point I wanted to make to, a real strong message I want to send to, like, as you put it, the person in the cube who wants to go for the next, wants to do something bigger. The other big fear that I have is the fear of starting, because I hear, well, what can I do? What can I say that hasn't already been said before? And I've had this really great experience with a young woman who I'm mentoring. She's 2 years out of college, and she had the same feeling. What could I do? I know I'm meant to do something bigger, but I'm so young and I'm just learning. What do I do? And so in our conversation, she said one of the frustrations that she has is she's a woman trying to make it in a male-dominated business. She said they didn't really teach us about that in school. What do you do? What do you say? How do you respond? How do you act? And I said, wouldn't it be amazing to talk to people, talk to women specifically, who have been successful in male-dominated business, and ask these questions? To step out and do something today, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be experienced. You just have to take people on your journey with you. You don't have to have all the right answers. You just have to have all the right questions. And that's what she's doing. Her podcast she just started is called The She Suite, and she's going to be asking these female business leaders, and she's taking her audience on her journey with her. And I think that's so inspirational for a lot of people out there who might be afraid to start.
We're doing something similar to that with cryptocurrency. Just, you don't have to make the right bet the first time. You don't have to be afraid of it. But if you come in and you just drip your way into a mass of cryptocurrency, you can learn out loud, and people can say, wow, Pete didn't know anything about this 6 weeks ago, and now I've got $40. Now I've got $80, and you just work your way into it. It is a wonderful approach to share that storytelling aspect, and make something accessible. It's really cool. I wanted to ask you one more thing for me, and then I'll be good. But one of the aspects that I see a lot on Twitter is people broadcast a lot. And you talk about how a creative way to engage with your audience, to actively go out and seek the people that are maybe sniffing around your product, and you say, hey, and you interact with them. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on proactively reaching out to people that either are close to becoming hooked on your stuff, or, engaging with them in this unique way?
Well, that's a great question, and I really appreciate that question, because it's really...
Oh, yes.
Well, you guys have done a great job, and I just want to pause and say how much I appreciate that you guys did your homework and you were very prepared, and you're asking me questions I've never been asked before, so that's the sign of a good podcast. So what's behind the of Twitter? What is this book? Or Dao is the Chinese pronunciation, and the Chinese word Dao means path. And what I talk about in the book is that there is a path to social media success that's focused on content, finding the right audience, and being authentically helpful. And this audience part is the piece that a lot of people miss, because they think, oh, I'll just post stuff on social media and it'll work like advertising. People will come to me. And it doesn't work that way. Social media, using some of the techniques and ideas we've already talked about, you can find those people. You can find people who are interested in you, people who have some propensity to maybe love you. It's not passive. You can find people who are searching for you, who are tweeting about, your products and services, or something that they need in their lives. So that has to be part of it. Even if it's 15 minutes a day, going out there proactively. I mean, one little thing I do, people may find one of my articles and they may tweet it, and I'll go on a Twitter and I see this is someone who seems to be interested in what I say, but they're not following me. So I follow them and I send them a tweet. I'll say, hey, thank you so much for sharing my content. I'm so happy you liked my post. And if you connect with them like that, just a little statement like that, then now I've got a new follower. So it's just that little extra effort, that being proactive and seeing who's out there, who's interested in you, and that's what it takes to really build that actionable audience over time.
It's so obvious when you look, back in the rearview mirror, like that's how you would do it in real life. You would introduce somebody that you wanted to be able to talk to and interact with. You would introduce yourself. You would say something nice. And it's so weird that on Twitter and social media, we think it's just by just blah, sending out a message, blah, automatic robot Twitter response, blah. I'm like, hi, robot. This is why, hi, robot. And then the person's like, I'm not a robot. Like, okay, cool. At least now we're talking, and the willingness to follow first. I love that, Mark, because I'll get these people that'll shoot something to me, and I'm like, hey, glad that we interacted. How did you find me? And they're like, listen to my jams. Listen to my jams.
Oh, it's so curious. And I do see this not just with individuals, but with companies too, that we treat people differently online than we would in real life. We wouldn't have someone come into our store and say, oh, you have to give me your email address before I'll let you in the store. Or we wouldn't, have someone come into the store and just hand them lots of ads or hand them all our blog posts. We'd want to get to know them, see what they're all about. And I think that's a good mindset is to just have this vision in your mind that every one of those avatars, every one of those little pictures on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you are, there's a real person behind there with a family. And maybe they're suffering today. Maybe they really need you, or maybe they're feeling joy today and they want to reach out to you. But you just have to force yourself to be more human in every interaction that you have. That's the line that I close almost every class with, almost every speech I give, is that's really the killer app, to be more human. It doesn't matter what they throw at you in the future, what the next Facebook's going to be. Just look for every opportunity to be more human in your presence.
Everybody, Mark W. Schaefer, at Mark W. Schaefer on Twitter. Follow him. If you've had fun this hour, he's got plenty more where that came from. Lots of books, lots of content. And Mark, we love your stuff. We love you. Thanks so much for being on the show. Can we do a follow-up in a few months and you can see what we've done with our homework?
Yeah, I'd absolutely love that. I really would. And I'd love to, even if you get any case studies or success stories from your listeners, I'd love to learn about that too. And if people want to connect with me, they can find me at businessesgrow.com. You can find all my blogs and podcasts and everything there. So I'd love to stay in touch and see how it goes.
Terrific.
If you guys want to interact with any of us, of course, you know that we're always willing to do that. I'm Pete A. Turner on Twitter. John is John LG69 on Twitter. Mark Valley is Yes Mark Valley. So always feel free to reach out. If you struggle for some reason on accident to not find Mark, hit me up. I will gladly do an introduction on Twitter for you guys. We're all about interacting. We love what you guys do. We want to hear more about it. As always, we want you guys to take your lady or your person or your special someone out and go listen to some live music and dance, because that's what life's all about.
Thanks, everybody. Mark Schaefer.
Thanks, everyone.